Hi! Okay, hello everybody. I just turned on the camera because it's recess week and I have nothing else to do. Okay, no, so actually, I just wanted to share about how I personally study and my studying style has changed over the years. Like, like since I was in secondary school to poly and now I'm in uni. Oh gosh. So anyway, take this with a pinch of salt because what works for me may not work for you. You might discover some other better method. This is just how I study. And yeah, okay, let's get to it. How I have always studied when I'm studying for an exam or test or what is that I like to write on paper. So this is ridiculous, right? Most people can't even read it, okay? I always start on the left, so that's like you go from here and then go to here. Yeah, so this is very inefficient. The rationale behind this method is that when I actually write stuff down, I always just copy like word for word about like every single detail and I put them down into these paper notes. I realized that it was very inefficient, but there was some like good points to it as well. Like for example, right, when you're reading the slides, you just read them, but you don't actually like register them. So like writing them down helps me to register them and actually like understand what is written on the slides, which I think it has its own merits. It's just that writing them down is seriously very inefficient. That's how I used to study and I still use this method sometimes if I do have the time to do so. But actually, for my current semester, we don't really have a lot of exams. Thankfully or not, we have a lot of projects instead. So there isn't really a need for me to write down word for word and prepare for an exam where they're going to ask me like theory questions where I have to write down the answer from the notes. So yeah, I don't really do that nowadays. What I do nowadays is usually we have formula sheets, right? I combine like, oh, this is chapter 1 formulas, okay, then chapter 2 and so on and so forth, and then I print out the important stuff that they ask us to print out, like this statistical table, yeah, this kind of thing. So I realized like I don't really need to spend so much time writing out word for word what is written on the slides. Anyway, I'm not even going to remember it. As long as you understand the content, that's definitely like 1,000 times better than memorizing it. Because memorizing it isn't going to get you far, especially if they ask you like an application-based question instead of just, oh, like what is the definition of this word? That is where the understanding part comes in, and that's where it becomes very important. Another thing that gets more useful is use of mind maps. But honestly, I don't really use mind maps either nowadays. As I mentioned before, because like my modules don't really have a lot of exams. But if there's really a lot of content, how I used to study for exams is I do mind maps. So I just write out the main points, and it's okay even if I can't remember like the definition word for word. As long as I understand the meaning of that word, then I think it's okay. When I'm in class, right, I have the slides on one side of my screen and then a Word document open on the other side of the screen, so that I just type down and take notes on what the teacher's saying. That's like one way for me to keep myself awake and to also ensure that I understand the content. Try to stay awake in class, that at least you can follow along with the examples, or like even if you don't really understand the guided examples that the prof goes through in class, right? At least you can refer back to them later. You have like a rough idea of what's going on already, so you can ask your friends for help or you ask the prof like through email or what. It does come in helpful when like you're revising, right? And then there's a part that you seriously don't understand, but you remember that the prof talked about it in class before. So that's when you open up your Word document, you Ctrl F and then you can just find the keyword, then you just read from there. And that has helped me a lot of times where like I can just clarify the concept on my own and resolve it by myself without having to ask like my prof or like my friends for help. When you're writing in your digital notes or whatever, right, I think it works very well to have a system about like how you want to structure, like, okay, I'm gonna have this main point here, then I'm gonna have like a few sub points, right? But then if you do all of that in just the word function of like the bullet points format, like it gets very confusing after a while, because you're just like, so it means everything's important. I see so many bullet points means like that those are not important, so yeah, it doesn't work that way, right? Obviously. One thing I do is color the headings. Like I highlight them in like, oh, yellow. Okay, yellow means it's a main point. Blue color highlights means that it's a sub point. Green is like a sub point, which I hardly ever use. Basically using indicators that you are familiar with, that you always will use in your notes, that will help you to identify like, oh, this is important and I need to remember this, whereas like this isn't exactly that important, so I can just roughly understand it and I can put it away already. Before going into an exam, make sure that you stay hydrated, stay healthy so that you can actually focus, and make sure you sleep well the night before. Bring in what you need. Don't panic even if you see that everyone else has like so many notes. Like as long as you know that you did your homework, as long as you know that you studied what you're supposed to, I think that's fine. Oh, another thing, you know, when you go into exams, right, don't bring too many things into your pencil case. I don't know, because like, you know, I see some of my friends, right, they bring in like a huge pencil case that has like markers and like highlighters and even staplers and like so many things that you don't actually need. What I go in with is just a pen and a calculator. Full stop. Yeah, I don't even bring correction tape. Like, since a long time ago, I like to use my phone to film like time lapses of myself doing work and studying. That was actually mainly for concentration purposes, because I realized that when I use my phone to film, I actually get less distracted because I don't have any access to my messages or like just distractions on social media whatsoever. It's like a very effective way, unexpectedly, to help me concentrate on my work. Anyways, yes, so that's all the advice I have. Not sure whether anyone will watch this video, but like if you end up watching it, give it a like. I'm kidding. Okay, so yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I think that everyone has a different studying style, as I mentioned before, so what works for me may not work for you, but yeah, all the best in your exams or quizzes or whatever, and good grades. Yeah, okay, bye. This video is a mess.